Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our last session of our Coffee Break for Cover Crops webinar series. The series has received financial support from the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Center, the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, and Northeast SARE. Today's speaker is Sandra Primard, who's an agronomist for the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Vermont. Before I turn the mic over to Sandra, just a couple of quick reminders. Sandra will be giving her presentation for about the next 20 or so minutes, and then we'll take your questions. To pose a question, you'll just type it into the question box and hit return. And we will be asking you also to respond to a very quick poll. And with that, I'll turn it right over to Sandra.
Good morning. Now that we're at our last series of the Coffee Break webinars, I thought that I would start out with discussing the cover crop benefits. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is cover crops can reduce soil erosion. This is the same field a year apart in March of 2014 on the left and March of 2015 on the right. And you can see a dramatic difference in the amount of soil erosion just by having that cover crop on the soil. Also, cover crops can suppress weeds. You can see in this photo that there's a thick mat of residue over the ground shading out the weeds. Also, some cover crops such as winter rye are known to have allelopathic properties that also suppress weeds. Cover crops can manage soil moisture. In this photo, you can see that the bare soil, it looks a lot wetter. For fields that have cover crop, a lot of times in the spring you can get on sooner because the cover crops are drying out the soil. They can also prevent some flooding during the season because of better infiltration and just help us a lot with the drainage of the excess water. And we know that cover crop adds organic matter. That increases our crop yields. It feeds the living organisms in the soil. Cover crops also can reduce soil compaction, as with these radishes. Cover crops can redistribute nutrients in the profile. On some soils, such as a sandy and gravelly soil, they tend to leach the nitrogen. So if we have cover crops on in the fall and the farmer needs to put a coating of manure to empty out their pits, that cover crop can then capture the nutrients and not allow it to leach away. Cover crops, the legume cover crops, can promote biological nitrogen fixation. And here in the middle photo we see the nodules that legumes form, and in those nodules the bacteria is doing nitrogen fixation and feeding the legume roots and also the crops around the legumes. And cover crops increase biodiversity. In this photo we see crimson clover, hairy vetch, and winter rye. The diversity of the roots and the root exudates also feed the living organisms in the soil. In just recent years, NRCS has contracted a number of acres of cover crop. In 2014, we had about 14,000 acres of cover crop contracted, and by 2015, it rose to 27,000 acres. Our funds for cover crops will provide enough incentive to purchase the seed and put the seed on the ground, and so many farmers are signing up for these contracts. If you're interested in a cover crop contract from NRCS, I invite you to visit our Vermont homepage, and I've put the link here. And each state has their, NRCS has their own homepage. It looks pretty similar. And you would want to click on the tab that I've circled in red that says Programs. And once you do that, you would click on the Financial Assistance link. NRCS has a number of programs. The one that cover crop fits under is the EQIP program, which stands for Environmental Quality Incentive Program. This is a voluntary federal conservation program that provides technical and financial assistance to producers who want to improve and protect their soil, water, air, plants, and animals on their land. Besides cover crop, EQIP funds many practices, such as waste storage, nutrient management, grazing, stream crossings, forest management, fence and pipelines, habitat management. I suggest that you visit one of our local USDA service centers and NRCS offices. I've put up the phone numbers for each county office. We have an office in most counties in Vermont. The only 3 counties that don't have an office are Bennington, Essex, and Orange counties. The EQIP provides financial assistance, and the first step is to fill out an application that you can get at one of those field offices. And then the field office will determine if there is eligibility. Not just eligibility for the land, but also for the landowner. Then, if you are found eligible, the applications are ranked with all other Vermont eligible applications, and then contracts are awarded. Most cover crop contracts have been awarded. And this year, for the 2016, we have awarded our contracts. If you fill out an application now, that will be for the 2017 year. We take applications at any time. Cover crop contracts can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. Some farmers do not want to commit to a long contract and just want to try out the cover crop, so they can sign up for 1 year and then come back for additional years. The maximum would be 5 years. And then reimbursements are made after the practice has been completed. So that's the financial aspect of EQIP. There's also a technical assistance aspect. Each conservation plan, practice that NRCS has a conservation practice standard. This is the one for cover crop, and we code it 340. Conservation practice standards contain information on why and where the practice is applied, and it sets forth the minimum quality criteria that must be met during the application of that practice in order for it to achieve its intended purpose. So as you may be able to see that I've mentioned, you can see some of the purposes of cover crops that I had earlier showed photos. You can see to reduce erosion, suppress weeds, increase biodiversity. Also, for technical assistance with cover crops, we have a specification guide sheet. This is it goes along with the conservation practice standard, and it provides technical details and other information to give further guidance for carrying out the selected components. We have tables in this specification guide sheet that were developed with the help of Extension and other universities. And in this table, we give single species of cover crops. You can see the minimum seeding rate, and it varies if it is broadcast versus if it's drilled. You'll see higher seeding rates if it's broadcast, and seeding depth. Also, the latest seeding dates, and it depends on what kind of cover crop you're putting in, if it's for fall, winter, spring, or summer. Recently, in the last few years, the latest seeding date has been set for October 1st, and this has caused some heartache for the farmers, and I want to say that it was set for October 15th in the past, but we moved it earlier to October 1st because we found that the date of October 15th, the plants were not getting very big, so they were not providing much soil cover, therefore not very much soil erosion. And we definitely want to get the cover crop in soon enough that they do get a big enough size to protect the soil. In the last couple of years, we have given exemptions on this October 1st seeding date because of such issues as there was a wet spring and the corn did not go in early enough. But we base it on the individual year, and I'm not sure how this year will go, if there will be an extension or not. So the table also shows the primary purposes of the different cover crops. You'll see erosion, nitrogen fixation, those are the legumes, and nitrogen scavenging, and termination dates. Heather Darby gave her presentation on the termination methods, if you happen to see that earlier. Also, we have a table on cover crop mixes. As we move from single species, many farmers are now going into cover crop mixes. And we only have a few here, but Extension is researching other cover crop mixes. And as data comes in, both of these tables will be revised with different seeding rates, times, mixes. So this is a document that does change periodically. Another technical guidance we give is something called a conservation practice job sheet. This is intended to be filled out by the field office and given to the farmer as their plan for what they're going to do on individual fields or a number of fields. The field office would fill in what the purposes are for those particular fields with their cover crops, which fields this job sheet is representing. And there is a table in that would identify the fields in acres. There's this pull down here on the cover crop species, and there's a number of species in there that would be filled in, the seeding rate, the planned date, and we know that that can change, the seeding method, when the termination date is planned, and how the termination method will be. NRCS is not the only one that has a cover crop program. The Agency of Ag also has their Farm Agronomic Programs Grant, Practices Grant Program. And I've put their link here on the slide. And if you notice partway down under downloadable documents, you'll see that there is a cover crop application. There's Farm Agronomic Practice Requirements. There's the Farm Agronomic Practice Fact Sheet. There's people to call here to find out more about their program. This is the fact sheet that's on their website right now, and you can see here the majority of the cover crops here in Vermont are winter cover crops, and it said that the application is due by August 15th, and you can claim your payments by December 1st. And this is their another sheet of theirs, their requirements, and you can see that they have a seeding date of October 1st also. Oh, sorry. And they have a minimum. Their seeding rate is a bit different than NRCS. They put up their payment and then their dates and are there. And this is what the application looks like. And it says at the top of the screen that you can contact Nate Sands, and his contact phone number and email are there. And they have, let's see. They have under the requirements, I forgot to mention, that a person can only apply if the farm did not receive a funded contract for NRCS or was found ineligible from NRCS funding. But again, you can contact Nate Sands and discuss your situation with him. And that's all I have today.
Great, thank you, Sandra. Before we move over to our Q&A, we just have those two quick poll questions that I had mentioned, so we'll just launch those right away. Here's the first one on your screen. Did you learn anything new today? If you could just respond to one of those responses, that would be great. Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll just close this one down, and we have one more. Okay, great. Thank you. And here comes number 2. As a result of what you learned, will you make a change on your farm or how you advise farmers? If you could just respond to one of those, that would be wonderful. And then we'll move over to Q&A. Great. Thanks for responding. That's really great for us. Okay, closing that down. All right, as a reminder to pose a question to Sandra, you're just going to type your question into the question pod and hit return. I'll be reading those out loud. If you are on a mobile device, you'll just look for the question mark, and that will open up the question pod for you. All righty. Sandra, here's your first question. You kind of already talked about this, but how do the Vermont and NRCS programs differ? Maybe you could flash up that other slide.
Let's see.
That previous slide.
All right. Well, the rate, the date is the same, at least for winter cover crop. That's the same, October 1st. The rate of seeding, NRCS requires 112 pounds of rye when it's broadcast or 75 pounds when it's drilled. And the Agency of Ag just made a straight 100 pounds per acre seeding rate. As for the funds, the Agency of Ag has $30 per acre. This year, NRCS varied from about $38 to $66 per acre, depending on if it was broadcast or if it was drilled. So we pay a little bit more, but every year the rates can change. They're set in Washington, D.C., and we don't have too much say on that, but those are the rates we had for 2016.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We have a question. How is the Vermont Agency of Ag program funded? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It
Okay.
said it's a grant program. That's, yeah.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It said it was a grant program, Farm Agronomic Practice Grant Program.
Okay, great. And Nate Sands would probably be able to answer that, so we can put up his contact information here. Let's see. Okay, so you had put up the job sheet, and what if, you know, with the termination and planting, there you go. So what happens if, say, you miss your window, it's rainy, and your winter rye gets away with you, and you decide to, like, I was planning to, you know, plow down, but now it looks like it could be harvested as a you know, feed. How is there flexibility within?
Yes, there is. Actually, we pay for our cover crop as soon as we see that it's in the ground. So we're not waiting until it's terminated. And you can harvest the plant matter. We would not consider harvesting the say the rye seed, because then it goes from cover crop, considered a cover crop, to being considered a crop. So the termination methods are mowing or grazing or tilling. So it's fine to have some flexibility on how you terminate it. You just can't harvest the seed and consider that a cover crop.
Okay, great. Are beginning farmers eligible for these programs?
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up. They are, and they are can get a higher rate for the payment because we have a category called underserved clients, and new farmers that I believe are less than 10 years in farming can get a higher rate for our practices. We normally pay 75% of what we think it will cost, but for the underserved farmers, they will get 90% of what we think it will cost.
Great. And then in terms of the EQIP eligibility, could you talk a little bit more about how eligibility is determined? Is it because, you know, is it, you know, demonstrated use of programs, or how do you determine?
I know there's for the person's eligibility, because I said you have to see the eligibility of the farmer and the land. The person's eligibility might be how much their income is, and it can't be over a certain amount, and I don't have that off the top of my head. The field office would have that. And for land eligibility, they should not have any sod busting, you know, problems with wetland mitigation type that would disqualify them from the program. They have to have all their T's and crossed and I's dotted.
Okay. I think that's all the questions in the queue. Does anyone else have any questions for Sandra? You can just type them in. while you're doing that, I'm just going to pop in the link. If you missed one of the webinar series, that we've recorded all of them, and they're all available either on the YouTube, the Northwest Crops and Soils YouTube channel, or I just provided the link there too. Just waiting a half a second for any other questions. Otherwise, we will. I'm just talking slowly, just in case. Okay, I think all of the questions have been answered, Sandra. Thank you so much for providing this information. Because we were calling this a coffee break for cover crops series, as some of you know, if you tuned into all 5 of our webinar series, you will be getting a free cup of coffee. So you'll, I think I just counted, there's like 8 of you that will be receiving that. So we'll be sending you a little something by email. So thanks for tuning in to all of our webinars. And with that, I'll wish you all a good day. Have a great one, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Sandra.
You're welcome.